Yeah, maybe we can just wait for some time, 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion on Indigenous people, their knowledge and practices for regenerative development. We are organizing it today to commemorate International Day for World's Indigenous Peoples. And we have 3 young panelists along with us, Mr. Sarlong Jonteron, Ms. Lina Pegu, Mr. Thomas Molsom, and along with us we have a discussant, Mr. Pankaj Teron, and we have requested Mr. Jayanto Sharma, who works with Arainak, an expert on traditional knowledge. Bioculturalism is also a livelihood planner. So then we have host of young and senior scholars here today. So I welcome you to this panel discussion to this evening. And I think nothing could be more, you know, painful today, on this day to read, because today the New York Times had a breaking news that says that Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change has said that in next 30 years, the Earth is going to see increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius in temperature. There is nothing that can be stopped. And this is announced just today. And today is the day to commemorate the people who has the least contribution to this climate change, this devastating climate change and global warming. But I think their knowledge and their practices can actually enrich the other communities, scientific communities, modern scientific communities across the world to fight the climate change. With this, I welcome you all again, and then I request Dr. Humi Thausen, Assistant Professor in Anthropology at Guwahati University, to formally address the welcome address. Humi, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Uttam Bhattacharya. Greetings to all. I'm Dr. Humi Thausen. I have been already introduced, yet I will take the pleasure again. I'm the Assistant Professor in the Department of Anthropology, Guwahati University, and the convener in Dimasa Scholars League. Today is the International Day for the world's indigenous peoples. And on this significant occasion, Youth Association for Development, YADEM, along with, in collaboration with Dimasa Scholars League, have initiated this program to discuss on a very significant theme, that is indigenous people, their knowledge and practices for regenerative development. I'm here on behalf of the organizing team to offer my welcome address. At the very outset, I welcome the discussant for today's panel discussion, Mr. Pankaj Teron, Executive Council Member, Asian Indigenous Peoples Act, Chiang Mai, Thailand. Welcome, sir. We have Mr. Jayanta Sharma, Independent Researcher, Traditional Knowledge, Bioculturalism, and Livelihood Planning, as the moderator for today's panel discussion. Welcome, Mr. Sharma. For today's panel discussion, we have with us 3 distinguished panelists, Mr. Sarlong Jonteron, Project Officer, Aranyak, Community-Based Program in Kohora River Basin, Kaziranga, Karbi Anglong Landscape. We welcome you, Mr. Teron. We have Ms. Lina Pegu, MPhil Scholar in Women's Studies, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Hearty welcome to you, Ms. Pegu. And we have Mr. Thomas Molsom, PhD Scholar in the Department of Sociology, Northeastern Hill University. We welcome you. Mr. Monson. We are so looking forward to hear from each one of you today. In the chair, we have Dr. Subal Maibangsa, Chairman, Youth Association for Development YADEM, and Director, Krishi Vigyan Kendra. I offer my hearty welcome to you, Dr. Maibangsa. I welcome all the members of YADEM and Dimasa Scholars League. And lastly, but not the least, all the participants who have joined us today in this panel discussion. I believe you'll be able to have a lot of knowledgeable takeaways from today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Humi, for a warm welcome. As the convention demands, we would like to introduce. I would start with discussing Mr. Ron. He has been the founding member and convener of Karbi Human Rights Watch. It was formed in 2005. The Karbi Human Rights Watch is a member of Asia Indigenous Peoples Act, organization based in Chiang Mai, Thailand, since the year 2010. Sateron attended 7th Regional Indigenous Peoples and Human Rights Advocacy Training. It was held at Chiang Mai, Thailand from 22nd to 28 March 2010. He also attended the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples in 2014 at UN headquarters, New York, on 22nd and 23rd September. And he attended the 8th session of the Export Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in Geneva from 28 to 24 July 2015. Next, Mr. Peron attended United Nations for Indigenous Peoples in Geneva in 2015 from 26 to 25. He attended 16th session of United Nations Permanent.
Dr. Bhattari, you are not audible.
I'm not audible?
Yes, yes.
Am I now?
Yeah, it's better. Yeah.
Okay.
You'll have to
hold this one then.
So hello.
Yes.
There are many people who kept keep their microphone on.
Okay.
So I request all the people who are not using to keep their microphone off.
Yeah, all the participants, while not using, you can mute yourself. As in when you need to speak, you can unmute yourself. I hope I'm audible now.
Yes.
Okay, let me again reintroduce our discussant, Mr. Pankaj Teron. He is the founding member and convener of Karbi Human Rights Watch that was formed in the year 2005, sorry. And since 2010, Karbi Human Rights Watch is a member of ASEAN Indigenous Peoples Pact, which is based at Chiang Mai, Thailand. Mr. Teron has vast, experiences in these issues of indigenous, and he has attended several international programs that includes 7th Regional Indigenous Peoples and Human Rights Advocacy Training, held at Chiang Mai, Thailand, in 2010 from 22nd to 28 March. Then he attended the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples in 2014 at UN headquarters, New York, on 22nd and 23rd September. He attended the 8th session of the Export Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples held at UN Geneva from 28 to 24 July 2015. Then he attended United Nations Institute of Training and Research Program for Indigenous Peoples at Geneva from 26 to 38 July 2015. Next, he attended 16th session of United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues from 24 to 28th April 2017 at UN headquarters, New York. And he has been the executive council member of Asian Indigenous Peoples Pact since April 2021. I also personally know that he is a very known sports organizer also. besides being a historian. So we look forward to his discussion today. Next, I would like to introduce our panelists, young panelists, of course, and we are all eagerly waiting to hear from you. First, I'm introducing Mr. Sarlong John Teron. He is working as a project officer in Arainok, an NGO based on biodiversity conservation. Since 2018, he has been working with the indigenous Karbi community residing at the Kaziranga Karbi Anglong landscape, Assam, as part of community-based natural resource management program at Kohora River Basin, Karbi Anglong. He did his MSc in climate change and sustainability studies from TIS Mumbai in 2017. He also participated in Forest Rights Act 2006, orientation program in 2016, and compiled a case study report of the implementation of Forest Rights Act in 6th Schedule area of Karbi Anglong, Assam. He also published a paper on non-timber forest products for livelihood security of forest-dependent communities, a case study in Kohora River Basin area, Karbi Anglong, Assam. Our next panelist is Ms. Lina Pegu. She is currently pursuing MPhil in Women's Studies from Tata Institute Social Science, Mumbai. Her topic of interest is indigenous tribal women, especially in the northeastern region. She otherwise had MA in English from Delhi University, postgraduate diploma in English journalism from IIMC Delhi. She worked in print journalism for a year in Delhi, and she also has a teaching experience at SIAS International University, Henan in China. She also took part in the visiting program for young sinologists, a month-long program for scholars and educators for China studies. We look forward to hearing from you, Ms. Pegu. Our next panelist is Mr. Thomas Monson, PhD scholar at the Department of Sociology in NEHU. He is researching on dialogue between the indigenous peoples and the state from the ethno-development perspective. He has a teaching experience of teaching at Holy Cross College, Agartala, and also ICFA University, Agartala. His other research interests include tribal or indigenous studies, ethnicity and identity, sociology of Northeast India. And most important news is that, very encouraging news is that his edited volume entitled Tripura, Innovative Tribal Development is under process of publication, which will be coming out shortly. We congratulate him for that in advance. And then I now leave the floor to our moderator, Mr. Joyanta Sharma, who is a consultant with Araina.
Thank you, Dr. Batari. At the very beginning, I offer my heartiest welcome to all of you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So at the very outset, I offer my heartiest welcome to all the panelists, discussion, and the officials from YADEM and Dimasa Scholarly. So today is a special day, International Day of Indigenous People, and this is a decade where there is a long discussions about the new concept of learning, which was called as disjuncture of learning, which was evolved way back in 2010 onwards, where it's interpreted that we are in a global situation where our previous learning about the life and doing the things are at disjuncture. The new experience indicate we have to go for relearning along with the relearning what we learned previously, and go for a new way of doing things in the present world. In this context, there isn't interpretations. This relearning for all the human beings in the world can be possible only through learning from the indigenous communities from the world. Because when there is a turning point, the human environment or human nature relationships in a chaos, in a doldrum, it is the way of life of the indigenous people where they develop the ecosystem approach of living is the only way to go for regenerative development, a concept of development which is looking beyond the sustainability and carrying all the sustenance and regenerative generations of nature and continuity of this natural world, and where human beings are considered as a part of nature, not a aloof component of nature. And in this regenerative concept, therefore, it's a development discourse which is looking after the development of the all living beings, including human, in the planet Earth. From that perspective, there are many things we have to learn from the indigenous community, and we are here, and we are lucky enough. We have 3 young scholars and one very knowledgeable persons among us who have a experience and observation how things are going on in relation to indigenous communities practices, their rights and existence in the global forum. So we hope we'll get able to get new information, new ideas, new knowledge which can help us to think and relearn for the new ways of life. So in this perspective, I would like to request first to share his thought to Mr. Sherlock John Tarrant, to share his viewpoints in this regard, how the existing practices or the scenario of the indigenous community help us to go ahead with the regenerative development. Please, Sherlock.
Hello. Yes, I think. Hope everyone can hear me. Hello.
Yes.
So first of all, good evening, everyone who are present in this forum. And first of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity. A forum on International Indigenous Day. So to begin with, I am thankful to Dr. Uttam Bhattari and for giving me this opportunity, for inviting me as a panelist in this particular program. So first of all, to begin with, I would like to start with questions of who are the indigenous community? What does it mean? So yes, according to the meaning, so it means something which is original or originating, and looking at the perspective of human society, which means native to something of a particular area. So to define the meaning of this particular indigenous community, this particular term, it means that any group of individuals or a society who are native to a particular area with their own distinct culture, traditions, dialect, and habit, and tradition and belief. So according to me, this means this is the meaning of an indigenous community. So my perspective, as I'm currently working and stationed in Kohara, Kaziranga, Karbi Anglong landscape. So we are currently working with an indigenous Karbi community residing in this particular area. So and I'm very new in this particular forum. So let's begin with. So so to begin with, so looking at the cultural perspective of our particular area, so cultural system plays an integral part of a community. Cultural system. So cultural systems means the belief, the traditions, the food habit, the architecture, and so on. So these are the parameters which depicts a community, which gives an identity to a community. So so looking through the perspective of the Karbi community, the Karbi community also has distinct culture and traditions which are
I would like to request the other participants kindly mute your microphone. Shalom, please continue. Shalom. Shalom, you are muted.
Yeah. Sorry, sir. So yes, yes. Coming back to the point, yes. Yes, every community has their own distinct culture, which is intrinsic to their own community. Yes, and so likewise, in Karbi community, the myth of migration forms an important part or genre of in folk narratives of the Karbi, and likewise the ritual to propitiate the death ceremony, which is known as Chomangkan, holding a feast in honor of death.
Roman Rongpi, please mute yourself.
Which are very intrinsic, which depicts the culture of Karbi community. So yes, and likewise the food habits, etc. So and looking back at the other important cultural aspects like the totemic symbols or wooden craft, etc. So and the ornaments, etc. This all plays an intrinsic role of a community. So likewise, in the Karbi community composed of 5 clans, and the 5 clans are depicted in one wooden craft, which is known as a Jambiliathon, which depicts the 5 clans, and this plays a very important role in the Karbi society, and as it is used, which is regarded as the soul of the Karbi community. So likewise, all the culture and traditional beliefs are passed on in the tribal society through oral tradition, which are passed on from one generation to another. Like taking back an example, the Karbi community has a vast repository knowledge of flora and fauna, and majority of the tribal communities around the world or indigenous community have a vast knowledge about their nature. So likewise, in the Karbi community, they also have a vast knowledge about flora and fauna, like those which are edible, which are like medicinal plants, edibles, non-edibles, etc. So with this, I would like to bring forward that. One second. So it is very important for an indigenous community so hello.
Yes, you are audible.
Yes.
You are audible. Continue.
Yes. So So likewise, there are lots of taboos and taboos in the society, which ultimately plays an important role in the field of conservation. So likewise, as I have mentioned before, regarding the environmental perspective. So, but currently what happened is that like the due to the advent of modern education and Western education actually, and due to the and diminishing cultural belief, like it has hampered a lot in practicing their cultural belief in the region. So yes, indeed, these are the current dilemma which we are facing in this 21st century. So we hope that with this through this forum, we may be able to build out a better future for the indigenous community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarlam. Uh, you rightly highlighted some of the aspects. Obviously, the Kirby practices and similar practices among the different indigenous community. There are different cultural keystone species, which are also keystone species for the ecological sustainability. Really, that's a new things we have to learn, and which is basically again discussed in the present day poetic ecology, the new form of the studies of ecology evolving
Yes,
in the present decades, which is called as poetic ecology. And similarly, these are the different components which are also part of the new paradigm of the eco philosophy. Thank you. Probably in the coming uh, time, so we can discuss a bit detail on these areas. Now, I would like to request Ms. Lina Pegu to share her thought in this perspective.
Okay. First of all, I would say really thank you for such a warm welcome by everyone. Although I'm quite early in my research to really be having too much critical insights into it, but I'll try to build on as I talk about my topic here is going to be briefly and broadly about development and indigenous people. A little bit on that discourse broadly. And as the previous speaker mentioned about modern education being an issue, I would also bring in slightly in my talk, perhaps maybe I can, I'll be reading out mostly, so I guess that's how I'll go about it. Okay, so for this talk, I'll be briefly speaking about how development discourse needs to be approached differently. In the recent years, the impacts of climate change are quite drastic, with floods, wildfires, and hurricanes occurring in many parts of the world more frequently. These ravaging impacts brings us back to the term sustainable development, which was initially introduced in the United Nations in the year 1980 to address certain negative threats both to the planet and humanity due to unrestrained capitalism. It finally led to the formulation of 17 Sustainable Development Goals in 2015 to end poverty and ensure equity by 2030. What we understand from this is that the current discourse on development needs to be relooked as it failed to bring equity as expected. It is important to understand that the term I'm using here is equity and not equality for this discourse. Also, for a disclaimer, I'll be borrowing most of the context of my talk from Jiten Yumnam's book, Development Aggression. Coming back to the idea of development, the term development is used and sometimes misused by the neoliberal state for its capitalistic tendencies in the name of national interest. We have since the 1991 Structural Readjustment Program, which is better known to us as LPG, that is like liberalization, privatization, and globalization. The collaboration of many multinational companies and corporations with the government for exploration of resources through different agreements. Despite the rights of tribal people in India guaranteed under the constitutional framework of the 5th and 6th schedules, which provide special laws to safeguard the land rights and self-governance within the places with high concentration of tribal population, people do not have enough safeguard. There has been mobilization of people against such development projects due to environmental degradation, land acquisition, displacement, compensation concerns, while regional states, administrative agencies, security forces, etc. stifle such resistances. As people do not have much legal safeguard, they are caught and charged with national security acts. As most decisions are centralized, the grassroots regional elected state government do not necessarily represent the discontentment of the people. This leads us to a different concept of governance and resistance under the development projects. The notion of governance here becomes more of manipulation, appropriation, and division of society, where notions of consent and ownership is automatically taken without consultation. Resistance here also belongs to people from the place of margin and poverty, ones who are most impacted by the big projects like dams and would seek relief from the government as compensation. Therefore, there is a crying need to rethink development and also resistance, not just as society against the state, but as different ways to negotiate relief, compensation, public meeting for awareness of the project. In most post-colonial societies like India, where development is seen as a will and right for economic well-being propagated through the representative government, it produces development as a primary responsibility of the state and people as the receiver of that development. Therefore, giving the government the sovereign right to make development discourse and policies over the rights of the people. When it comes to the tribal region, the state in its discourse enlists tribal communities based on the local community recommendation, which specifies backwardness and geographical isolation as some of the important criteria to identify tribes. This proceeds from a discourse that tribes being backward and therefore dependent on states' intervention, a patriarchal role. As I mentioned earlier, the centralized decision-making ignores alternative discourse that can be enhanced through tribal narratives. In a TED Talk, Julia Watson, she's a designer who looks at sustainable designs for a resilient future, looks at living cultures in our society. She talks about people who have lived in remote places with extreme climatic conditions and adapted. One example she uses is not very far from here. In Meghalaya, where it rains incessantly in the monsoon seasons, villages are cut off because of the floods, and community, in order to keep the connection and communication, build root bridges by scaffolding the roots, which takes over a span of 50 years to grow. This 1500-year tradition with 75 such existing structures are not only resilient, but also environmentally viable. Another example we can talk about is the Miri Chang houses, which are built to withstand flood. These houses are traditionally built by the communities together, and the knowledge is passed on through generations, with each house having a proper measurements. These are within the community some of the knowledge systems that exist. As sensitivity towards tribal knowledge systems and worldview has not been identified as scientific knowledge system, it becomes very difficult to look at what alternative development discourse presents. This brings to one of my points that I would like to stress. What is the nation within national interest? We already know that post-colonial societies like India were constantly integrating into the larger national discourse, which we can see in government policies. It also highlights how such process of integration rally around the dominant interest, subsuming the local interest. For example, national laws like Railway Acts 1989, which was used for land acquisition for public purposes under Section 20, most villagers were not aware of the laws under which their lands were acquired. Villagers also alleged that it destroyed residential plots, agricultural land, forests, etc., without their prior knowledge or consent. This instance is taken from Oinamlong village in Tamenglong district in Manipur. Similar situation can be seen in the context of Jadugora, which is in Jharkhand, the nuclear plant where communities suffered the impact of radiation, which was a huge social cost on the people, or the mining exploration of big corporations causing land degradation, water pollution, air pollution, and exploitation of forest resources. The notion of public purpose or national interest and the secular developmental projects are largely anti-people and mostly in places occupied by tribal communities. These marginalizations are not only specific to mineral-rich resources, but social inequities exist everywhere, including educational institutes. This also presents a picture of who is included in such resistance. The state narratives mostly paint resistance as anti-progressive, anti-development, and thereby anti-national. We need to be careful when discourses around any sort of resistance becomes automatically anti-nation, national, without critically being aware of the humanitarian cost. Earlier, when I mentioned about when I'm talking about the educational inequities, I would like to bring in the Thorough Commission report. It will not be wrong to see that without equity, learning fails. And why is it important to talk about educational equity is that in our country, we rely on education for political, social, economic upliftment for all. Harvard professor Anthony Abraham Jack, in his book titled The Privileged Poor, How Elite Colleges Are Failing Disadvantaged Students, he addresses key aspects of inclusive educational programs and why these programs fail to empower the marginal students. In his book, he spells out clearly that providing access is not necessarily or automatically inclusive. The diversity initiatives fail majorly because of the insensitivities and the lack of proper support in these institutions. He narrates his own example to paint a clearer picture. For example, students entering a top school or university through scholarship often come from poorer neighborhoods where building rapport with a teacher or a mentor is not a requirement. While in these elite institutions, there is a taken for granted the importance of building a rapport. They are early on ingrained with the notion of mentorship and the benefits it brings to the students, both in grades and further opportunities. In India, besides this, the language, sometimes the medium of education, plays a role in already setting out different challenges. Most students coming from government schools have little exposure to English, while private schools lead in this aspect. It already creates a divide between the students. I have recently managed to read a report on why these reservation policies fail. One way to understand this structural disparity is just by looking at the data where there is overrepresentation and underrepresentation of communities. Such figures are one good way to spot inequities. The issue is further complicated in India because although India voted for the UN declarations of right for indigenous people, but it refuses to recognize the concept of indigeneity due to working definition that UN uses. As we celebrate International Day for World's Indigenous People, it is important to know that the UN adopted the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP, in the year 2007. Although India voted in favor of it, it is not a signatory to the UNDRIP. What it essentially means is India supports the human rights of indigenous communities, yet it does not recognize the term indigenous communities due to certain concept of indigeneity linked with the term aboriginality. Although in the United Nations, there is a considerable thinking and debate on the definition, one of the most accepted working definitions is taken from a study on the problem of discrimination against indigenous population by Jose R. Martinez Cobo. So this because India is not a signatory, it posits India, an entire Indian as India positions Indian population as entirely indigenous. It is difficult to have an international solidarity because somehow there is also an internalization of indigenous communities through scheduling tribes, whom we also call Adivasis. Despite special provisions under the Constitution, it is important to remember that there is a deep issue of dispossession of lands due to big national development projects, forced evictions due to extractive industries, and even human rights violation, along with social inequities in jobs. So, like mine is a very broad topic that I have approached here. So maybe in the discussion, maybe we'll have more of that. That's what I'm expecting. And with that, on that note, I'll stop my talk here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lina. You really highlight what is the dilemma, particularly capitalistic concept of development, where the voice of the indigenous peoples or the participatory planning or aspects are totally failed. On the other hand, there is a new construct where the people of the marginal community or the community who do feel that they are not, their voices are not included, and sometimes they are entitled with the anti-national, which is other aspects. At the same time, the extractive approach of development displaces the indigenous community from their ecosystem-based living way of life, which creates a pause to sustaining their living systems. At the same time, you were rightly highlighting the contradictions, how our national commitment to Global Forum for the safeguarding and development of the indigenous communities have a contradictions. In all this perspective, you also highlighted how the educational approach, which is one of the important tools for the development of the everyone, as well as creating a breeze of understanding about each others for a global humanism and citizenship, where it fails, particularly it's become a tools of discriminations, what your thought basically reflect. So these are some of the very important challenges. Probably in our course of discussion, we have to find out what can be the possible ways we together can make a strategy and make a plan. It may be an alternative discourse in the line of regenerative development with an approach of pro-nature living ways and ecosystem ways of living together. It may be the other areas. Probably our discussion will highlight on those areas. Thank you again. Now I would like to request Thomas Monson from Daegu to share his thought in this line.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I have a slide. Actually, I want to show my slide. Am I allowed?
Yes, yes, sure.
Okay, okay. Okay. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is visible.
All right. Okay, first of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee, like the team, Youth Association for Development and the Dimasa Scholars League, for this great opportunity to, give me opportunity to say something about the indigenous knowledge, what I know or what I think of. And of course, I would like to give my special thanks before I begin my presentation to Professor Uttam Bhattari for giving me this opportunity, and also Professor Shukendu Deburma. He's a he's a HOD in the head of this Department of History in Tripura University. He is present in the meeting. And also I'd like to give my greetings to our discussants, Dr. Pankaj Tarun and our moderator, Mr. Jayanto Sharma. My name is Thomas Monson, and currently I'm a PhD scholar from Department of Sociology, NEHU. So for today's, in this auspicious day, that this morning I was just wishing some of my friends. So they told me that we have to be proud, we have to be proud. So I feel very much proud to be an indigenous or a native, you can say the people or the, community in this region in Northeastern India. So for this paper, for this now presentation, I made a small slide that is on a traditional knowledge and ethno development, regenerative development. I will not be so much of dealing into the, the theoretical perspectives, because my other panelists, they have already mentioned that have beautifully, they have already presented. And of course, our the second presenter, Miss Lina Pegu, have beautifully presented all the aspects. So why I will not be presenting for this, from theoretical perspectives, because this, honestly saying that this area, it's, I like it. I wanted to broaden my knowledge on this, the aspect of this traditional knowledge. But since I'm very much new to the research, I do not have so much of a field experience. But still, from my observation, what I would like to understand, the understanding like how the important is the traditional knowledge. That is, of course, from my observation that I would like to tell you all. Particularly, I'm focusing on, the herbal plants, because when you talk about the traditional knowledge, it refers to, any of the knowledge of indigenous communities, which may be documented or which remain undocumented. And it is related to any kind of agriculture knowledge, medicinal knowledge, or biodiversity related knowledge, or any expressions of the folklore in a form of music, dance, song, handicraft, design. So these are all the indigenous knowledge. So here I will like to take only the one aspect, that is the medicinal, the plant or the herbal practice, that how this is very much important in our day-to-day life, in my observation. And the second, I would like to talk about the youth's perspectives. What is the youth's perspectives on this traditional knowledge? Because we know in this generation, especially the youth, very much, even if I include myself, that we are very much, in depth to, or any kind of other things that which we don't really see the importance of this traditional knowledge. Or you can say that this traditional knowledge is kind of, it's disappearing. I mean, I will not say it's completely, but yes. So, and the third objective I have, that is the ethno development. So, which I see as a similar to the regenerative development. So I will try to examine, or I will try to tell that how the traditional knowledge could be one of the factors to regenerate, or say to, achieve this ethno development among the indigenous community. So of course, for this, as I do not have the much of field experience, I'll be basically relying on the secondary data and my own observation. So for this understanding, I have taken the Tripura context among the indigenous of the Tripura. You see, in Tripura, there are 19 indigenous of the tribes. I give this indigenous of the tribe because indigenous, in our region, not really, it's not really like, how you call it, as per the constitution of our India, that, the tribe, the scheduled tribe is very much, appropriate. But we say no to it. So which is why I give a bracket. So in Tripura, there are 19 indigenous communities. We have this, namely, the Tripuri, Jamatya, Chakma. But other than these 19 tribes, there are other communities as well, who are maybe, numerically very much like small, which is why maybe they never had a kind of this on the broader name. So, and coming to the traditional medicinal practice, it is very much integral part of a culture of a people of northeastern India. And coming to the smaller the state, the Tripura, the many different types of the herbal medicine, or the what do you call it, the herbal practices are being conducted or the use. Like for example, we have a different kind of thing, like a disease, from the disease or the bones, or like say any kind of other disease also they can do it, this they can cure with the traditional this practicing of the herbal practices. So but here this understanding of the importance, I would like to give it from a 3 case studies. I won't take much time. I will just try to summarize in a very few words, so that from these 3 perspectives, or from these 3 case studies, we will come to know that how much the traditional knowledge is important in our life, and as well as how far the youths are very much have know about this traditional knowledge. Okay, so the number 1 case is the name is not the the original name, I just gave it. So she is my auntie. So here it was 2 years back. It was 2 years back. So it around like say 2 or 3 p.m. she broke her leg, as you can see. So what happened? We came to know that she broke her leg. So what happened? We gathered all the family members. We were planning what to do with her broken leg. No, which doctor to take out, like that. So my mom and some of my aunties, they keep on saying, let's go to the Ochai, which we refer to the practitioners, the herbal practitioners in our community, Ochai or the Kobiraj, we call it. So here, me and my brother, means my auntie's son, my cousin, we denied completely. We said, no, we cannot take my auntie to such kind of practitioners who are not even trained properly, who doesn't even have any kind of a certificate, no, nothing. So even my brother also, my cousin brother, my auntie's son also agreed with me that, no, we will not take it. So eventually what happened? My mom and my other aunties, they have to listen to us that yes, we will take her to the doctor first. So what we did, we first took her to the hospital and we did the x-ray and all the necessary stuff. Then what happened? One of our physiotherapists informed us that, you come to my home, I will give a plaster or whatever the need, I will, give it. So we listened to him, then we went and we gave him whatever he asked, whatever he prescribed. And then what happened? After he gave all the, the bandage or the plaster, everything, we waited for 1.5 months. So it has already passed 1.5 months, but my auntie's, the pain was not reducing. It was completely not reducing. So we were worried. What happened? So what we did not inform to that doctor directly. We went to again did the x-ray. So what we found, it was nothing, no improvement. Okay, no improvement. So which is why she was having more problem, more pain in her leg. So then eventually what we have to listen to my aunties and my mom that, okay, let's take her to that person who practiced this herbal this time. So what happened now? My auntie, she can walk, she can she can do anything, like she can run also, no problem. She don't have any pain at all. So this is the first case. Now the second case is I have that who had an accident. Okay, who had an accident. What happened? We again, this is not my relative, but one of a neighbor, in the village. I know him. So we took him to the hospital. So what happened in the hospital, in the government hospital? So we kept him for quite some time. Then what happened? There was no any result. So the doctors, what they came that the leg or the hand, it has to chop down. We have to cut it off, so that, or else what will happen, some kind of infection, this and that. They've given so much of, the scientific, those diseases they have, they have referred to us. So what we did, no, we will not, we will take him to that person. So again, what we did, we took him to the person. Okay, so this is the second case. Now the third case is a different. Okay, the third case is different. The third case is all about like where I did my master, which is in Tripura University. Opposite to the main gate of the university, this man have a hotel. I mean, a small restaurant where we go and eat. Okay, so what happened after I left the university after 2 or 3 years, I went to just to visit my old university. Then what I found that with this person, the hotels, the person, the leg was already cut off. One leg was already gone. So he was just, crawling around, like, he doesn't look like a normal person anymore. So I asked around to the, the person, like the people who are around, I said, what happened to him? How did he lose his leg? Then they told me, yeah, he had an accident. He had an accident, so they cut this down. Now here, from these 3 cases, what I understand personally, that how the importance of the herbals or the medicinal plants, how much it is important. I will be very much honest, like I do not know any kind of, I do not know the names of those herbals or the plants. But now what I suggest to people is that if I hear any kind of cases like this, I directly say, please do not go to the hospital if you want to have leg or hand. So this is what I refer to all my like people, whomever I know. If I have any kind of cases, I directly tell them that please don't go to the hospital, because you will lose your hand or leg. You will return without your hand or leg. This is what. So the consequences is, we see the case 3. The case 3, I wish I could show his photo, but since it's very long time, so I could not show. So once, as a human being, just if we imagine ourselves losing a hand or a particular, hand, if you lose your hand, somehow you may be able to manage it. But if you lose your leg, I don't think that that's a very good thing. So people will see you differently, this and that. So this is how I understand how much the importance of the traditional knowledge of the medicinal practice or the herbal practice, one of the factors of the traditional knowledge. And coming to the youth's perspectives, as I said, I put myself as a case, like, how we do not believe. Okay, my mom, my aunties, they were not, educated, or you can say they have not gone to the university, colleges. But I went to the university, I'm pursuing my PhD, and I say no to this traditional knowledge. So you see, as a youth, not like me, how, what about the other youths, what they will be thinking? This, not believing in this traditional knowledge. They say, oh, this is just, nonsense. Especially in this Corona time, like many youths are fed up of their parents. Many youths are fed up of their, because they don't know the parents, the villagers, they will say, oh, this is what, is it true? This is true. But the youths are like, no. So this is what is happening. So here, what I understand is that the traditional knowledge we already know. We have already recognized the importance and many of the things also, as many of the law and many of the the programs have been implemented. For example, in Tripura, I'll give us a few cases. In Tripura, particularly these conservation of the development of medicinal plants in Tripura through community participation, it has started from 2008, from 2008 to till 2014. But now they say like, there are already like 6 projects have going on. Like this, it's an ongoing process, but we do not know anything. Nobody, like hardly few people who have their personal experience, only they will believe the importance of this traditional knowledge, but the others know. So these workshops, I know this is very much important to conduct, but I do not see much of a result. As as the international people's rights of this indigenous rights, and also correctly pointed out by our panelists, Ms. Lina Pegu, that these kind of the programs, policies are not even aware by the indigenous people. It just came in the name of these people, that people, but doesn't know. I give my personal another example. I could not show the photo I have in my telephone, but I could not phone. I could not transfer in my computer. Few days ago, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I went to like June, like the June cultivation. I went to eat as a picnic with my cousins. So what happened in the middle of the jungle? In the middle of the jungle, there was a boat. There was a kind of a stone boat. It's written like, this much of money has been spent to, to build the road. Now my questions is like, who's using that road in the jungle? Is it for the animal, or is it for the human beings? So what, and the documentation of this also, it's very much, it's going on, the documentation. Okay, I'll give my personal opinion. Like after I got the invitation to speak on this topic, I went to, I went again, was searching for the documents or the books or the studies on this traditional knowledge. But I do not see much. Maybe I may be wrong, but particularly coming to the Tripura or the Northeast, I don't see much. I have seen there are only some reports, like, this must have been done, this must have, but no, like the effective research have not been conducted. So what I think is that merely documenting won't, give a, a good outlook to the indigenous knowledge. And secondly, the herbal practitioners. Since I took the case of this herbal practitioners, I would like to emphasize here, the Ochai or the Kobiraj, which we term in our community, they have no any recognition because they don't have the certificate, they don't have the other things. So which is why people also, they never visited them. People, they are always reluctant to visit to them. And lastly, the equipment, they don't have at all. The person whom I'm referring to, the person whom we took, my auntie and that uncle, what he used to say that, bring me an X-ray copy because I don't have the machine. You see, now he's not only blindly not trying to make it good, or he practices what his herbals. He will see through the extra copies, then only he will perform it. So this is also not been the only workshop. I don't think it's very much important. Yeah, and the third thing, the inculcating traditionals among the youth is very much important. This is very much important. So now here, coming to the another aspect of ethno development. Ethno development, I see, or it is a critical response to the ethnocide. Ethnocide, it is a loss of the culture and an identity. When there's a loss of a culture and the identity, there is also loss of a indigenous knowledge. So this ethno development, it is particularly developed by the Mexican sociologist, the Rodolfo Stephenhagen and the Bijon Hattie, and it was further popularized by the UNESCO. That it is a paradigm shift, that a critical response to the Western view of the development. Because still now what we see in our state, in our in our own place, all the developments, all the project comes from the viewpoint of Westerners, that the tribalism, the collectivism, these are nonsense. So this is what is happening. So this ethno development, as I said earlier, that I see is as a similar to the regenerative development, that it is to give the the power of the decision making in the hands of the indigenous people, and to let them to go to their path how they want to go. But still, what happened is that doesn't give so much of effect. And now we're coming to the Sustainable Development Goal, the pledge that no one leaving behind. It has renewed, it has renewed the spatial attention and interest of the marginalized section. And many countries, including our states also, like there are many, you can see like, development effort, elevation program, this and that, many things comes. But they never able to, come up with a good result or the desirable development that every indigenous communities they see. So what I see is that, as Stephen Hagen would quote, that it is not an overlook, but a paradigmatic blind spot, that they are not able to understand the specific need of the indigenous community. So here, what as a one small factor that the traditional knowledge, I see as one of the finest factor to achieve this ethno development, that becoming developed on their own, or development with identity. So therefore, as today is we are celebrating this our Indigenous International Days of the Indigenous People here, even in the UNESCO, the theme is today's is the no one leaving behind, with a call for a social contract. Now here, what is the new social contract? We need to understand this part, because the United Nations, it keeps on, saying since the beginning of this year, in the 1st or the 2nd July of 2021. So this social contract is an unwritten agreement that is societies to make cooperate with the social and the economic benefit. So what I understand is that there should be a proper dialogue between indigenous and the state before implementing any kind of a policies in order to achieve even our sustainable goal 2030. So with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. I've taken a lot of time. I apologize for that. So yes, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Monson. Kindly stop your screen sharing.
Yes. Yes.
And really, I appreciate your thought. You rightly highlighted about the traditional ecological knowledge, because this traditional herbal medicinal knowledge is a part of traditional ecological knowledge of the indigenous communities. And at the same time, you are highlighting how these knowledge systems are not properly recognized by the Western thought of the knowledge system, where there is a need of new approach to document and interpret the logic behind these knowledge systems for better understanding, which may create a new approach of relearning for everyone. And this sort of knowledge, reinterpretations of indigenous knowledge can be possible if the younger generations of the indigenous community put larger collective effort to do that, because they are the right people to understand and interpret these things. At the same time, this is a time there is a need of dialogue for better ways to make development for everyone and creates a path of sustainable development, regenerative development for the indigenous communities. Thank you.
Yes, sir, you're absolutely correct. Thank you, sir.
So now I would like to request honorable discussion Dr. Pankaj Taron. He has a vast experience and observation and experience in the global forum also. Highlight the aspects and give us the ways how we can go forward in this line in a collective ways in the particularly Northeast context as well as in Indian context. Dr. Carol.
Thank you, Dr. Sarba. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. First of all, I'm very much thankful to organizer of this webinar, this program, Youth Association for Development, and also the Dimasa Scholars League for organizing this program on the occasion of World Indigenous Peoples Day. And my sincere thanks goes to Dr. Uttam for organizing such a lovely program, and which is a very lively program, and with a very learned scholars. And I can see my seniors who was involved in IP movements, not only in India but in a global level as well, like Dr. Sukhendu Debbarma. So let me try to put whatever I know. I'm not that much a big person, I'm not that much knowledgeable person, but I will try to speak whatever I have learned, whatever experience I have, and whatever I came to know, all the things before you. Yes, IP Day being observed all around the world today. I just want to share one small thing, especially talking about Karbi Anglong, Difu. I just want to share about IP Day celebration. Way back in 2011, 12, we used to observe, celebrate this IP Day. But at that time, hardly some organizations, some people who are very much active in social activism, where they know about what is actually IP Day, why the importance of IP Day. And there are also people who don't know about UNDRIP as well, United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. But at that time, we were resolute to create awareness about our rights, Indigenous people's rights, and we keep on organizing, we keep on creating, raising awareness amongst the Indigenous peoples of Karbi Anglong, not only in Karbi Anglong, but outside the Karbi Anglong as well, like in Umrangso area of Dimasa, and even in some parts of Kamrup, where Karbis are especially there. So this is how actually the importance of, or the people came to know about our rights. That is one of the most important things. We don't know why we have, everything was given to us through government, all the rights are there, but we are very much not aware of all these things, all the rights that is being assigned to us. Now, talking about UNDRIP, all the panelists, especially Thomas and Lina, they have touched upon UNDRIP. Yes, UNDRIP is one of the weapons which gave us some strength to raise our issues or to fight for our issues. Like we have in UNDRIP altogether, there are 46 articles. Out of this, all 46 articles, there are some areas which focuses on political, which focuses on especially, say, distinct institution for development of IPs, and then there are other like cultural integrity, Article 88, and then in Article 11 it says about our culture, protection of our culture. Article 12, which talks about our spiritual and religious tradition, which Thomas have spoken. then language or education. So there are in all the 46 articles, everything, all the aspects, all the areas were covered. All the areas are covered. Now, coming into the discussion, Sir Long John, he had rightly pointed out about the traditional practices, all the traditional practices of Karbis, which Karbis have been carrying on since time immemorial. Land is related, land is very much dear. Without land, our culture, our tradition would not be completed. Likewise, we have many other things with nature. We are very much acquainted with nature. We have been living with in the forest since time immemorial. We know each other. So these are all things, and we know all the herbal things, all the traditional these things. So these are what is there, and this is how we are known. We are called. That's how we call us indigenous peoples. So this. So coming into this other aspects, which one of the panelists, Lina, Pegu, he had rightly pointed out about development. Development being taken out, capitalism is being coming into, which really affected the lives of the indigenous peoples, which had affected the indigenous people's culture, which has affected, which forced the indigenous peoples to relocate themselves to other areas. But there is one provision in UNRIP, and even that provision is also adopted by the Indian government as well, like free, prior, and informed consent, FPIC. FPIC is a tool which is given to the indigenous peoples, and which government were also forced to adopt it into their system, into this thing. But in spite of that, also indigenous peoples are being forced to, they are being evicted from their land. Why? Because indigenous peoples are living since time immemorial in the area which is rich in mineral resources. In mainland India, we have seen that thing, especially in Orissa, Jharkhand, and all. Even in northeastern part of India also, we are seeing all these things, which is really actually imbalancing the ecology, imbalancing the environment, which is a very great threat to environment at this juncture. So these are the things, and one of the important thing here, I want to highlight, and coming into educational system, it's if we really want to improve education system of the indigenous peoples, indigenous children, then we should give them, government should create that thing that indigenous children learn whatever in the schools or in formal or informal education system. They should learn with their own mother tongue, not with the alien language, not with the other means larger communities language, but through their own mother tongue, then only they will be able to grab the issues. They will be able to understand easily. So it is there in UNDRIP as well. Language, in the educational system, promoting their own education. So these are the things which are everything and in there, and also government they have adopted all these things, but in a very critical thing. I'm not going to criticize the government, but the thing is that it should be people friendly. It should be IP indigenous peoples friendly. It should be tribal friendly. It should not be an alien to us. Likewise, here just I want to highlight one thing about, especially about indigenous knowledge of medicinal these things. And everyone we know that Ayurveda in India, acupuncture from China is very well known. But these are all fully propagated, and these are all before the advent of the modern scientific knowledge system. Then why not traditional system as well? Why not traditional medicines? Why not traditional treatment system also get recognition? This is also one of the thing that I would like to highlight here, and we should actually put trust on it. And now coming to this one, youth and development. Youth and development. I just want to take example from our community, from Karbi community, or what we have practicing. What now Karbi community have come up and practicing this thing is that especially Karbi Youth Festival. At one time, you will believe, I don't know whether people will believe or not, Karbi people were all taking up the culture of the other people's culture, other people's language, other people's tradition. Means those who are in the periphery of the Karbi people. But now, youths, they have realized that no, we are the future. If we don't preserve our own culture, we don't learn our own traditional things, we don't create awareness about our tradition, then we won't be able to say to the world that, or we won't be able to tell our next generation that yes, we have this tradition, we have this culture and all. So Karbi Youth Festival, which is used to be held every year in Difu, Taralang, so is one of the example, but it has taken some form influences. But this year, what I have seen from last year and this year, there is a resurgent change in the outlook, change in the approach of the youths to, especially to protect, preserve, and promote the culture. That is one of the example that it's a long way to get success, but I think it will bear good fruit. This is what I want to tell one thing. And other thing, especially tapping into traditional practices, especially folk songs. And in Karbi tradition, there are some rituals. Without woman, all the rituals are not at all complete. There are tradition like when a person die, for person, for the soul to go back to his or her ancestor home, Ucepi is there. She used to tell the that to go back to his or her ancestor home. She used to tell the soul through songs, through traditional song, to which route to take and where to take rest and how to reach your home. Like so, that was also dying. That was also in the process of dying. There were very few traditional women who took up that position. So conscious ladies, they came up, Karbi ladies, they came up and they organized a Rasinja song, which is especially to give trainings. It's like a school, it's like an institute to the budding woman who wants to become Ucepi or who wants to associate themselves with rituals which are exclusively for women. Without women, some of the rituals are not at all complete in Karbi tradition, in Karbi system. So these are the things that I have seen, at least encouraging things coming up. Likewise, and I hope that all the indigenous peoples especially from northeastern states, from Northeast, and also from other areas also, we should at least encourage, or we should at least encourage this type of things for preservation and protection, promotion of our of our culture. And also at the same time, here I would like to also put stress on especially creating awareness on UN-RIP. United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Without, now UN has taken the note that without indigenous people, even controlling the climate change, even implementation of SDG is not complete without indigenous peoples. So importance of indigenous peoples, their richness in controlling the climate, the richness in their tradition has been recognized. So now it's our responsibility. It's indigenous people's responsibility to carry forward, to contribute ourselves for our better society, for our future, for future development, for future this thing. And one of the key thing, one of the important thing that I would also would like to touch upon is about SDG. Last speaker said that about SDG. Now SDG, they have mainly focused on indigenous marginalized sections. So this it's the core elements of sustainable development, which focus especially on economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. So this is what the things, if we can minutely look at the elements, core elements that SDG are focusing, then without IP's knowledge, without IP's support, it is not going to reach the goal. So this is the thing that I would like to highlight. And other thing at the same time, what I would like to focus is especially on what you say, food, traditional food system. even if they have whatever projects, whatever policy they are taking, it's all depend on indigenous people's inputs. So indigenous peoples are, in a way, in all the fields, are, we can say, are the only people who can really can give something for the future generation if we really want to protect our environment. So these are the main things that I would like to highlight. And, yes, yeah, these are the main things that I would like to highlight. And for just to, in conclusion, I would like to put stress on few things. 1, 2 points is that for sustainable development to reach its goal, and for regenerating our development, there should be broad and effective participation of indigenous communities in all discussions and negotiations with the government on any resources, genetic resources, or any traditional knowledge, or any development activities that the government are going to take. They should consult indigenous peoples. They should consult all the actors who are really matter in all these things, in all these development things. So with this few points, with this very much little point, I would like to conclude. Actually, today I have a whole day program till 5 p.m. I was having program from morning, since morning, and Dr. Uttam Bathari, he had called me up to be in the program. So I was so happy to be in the program, to be invited in this program. So I'm very happy. I'm very much thankful to Dr. Bathari for inviting me to speak. My approach is not true, not like academic approach, because I'm more of an activism kind of person, but not that much. I'm not that much. My approach is more of an activism approach. So with this few words, once again, I would like to thank Dimasa Scholars League and Youth Development, Youth Association for Development, and also would like to thank everyone for being for their patience, for showing their patience and listening to me. And it was a really wonderful program. It was a very good experience for me to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Teron. Really, your words give highlight to the different dimensions of the whole issues, and particularly your core masses that in this present context of the situations, indigenous community the people has to take their own initiatives to highlight the knowledge systems, interpret it in the new light, and bring forward for a dialogue, and maybe it's a some kind of right-based dialogue for the whole process is equally important. At the same time, you are highlighting how, in comparison to Chinese medicines or the Indian Ayurvedic medicines, how there is a need of establishing the indigenous communities' traditional medicinal practices as a new thought process or knowledge of the medicine is a very important aspects you have highlighted. At the same time, you are talking about traditional food systems, which is very much linked with the ecosystems actually, and that is one of the core reason that most of the indigenous communities are ecosystem people, which is basically make through their food system, and there is a cultural in tone. So in a greater perspective, all of you, including Taron and other speakers, you were very rightly you highlighted what is the importance of the traditional ecological knowledge, traditional technical knowledge systems, as well as traditional values and ethics, which is pursued by the every indigenous communities in the world, and as well as in the northeast of India. Why that these are important for the relooking for the regenerative development. It's a great learning, but as because we have some participants like respected Sukendra Debalman, who is a very knowledgeable person among which us. If he highlights something very, because we have paucity of time, highlight something in this context, that will be a great learning for us. And after him, if any participants have any questions to our panelists or the discussions, you can put forward your questions in this chat box. I'd like to request Dr. Sukendra Debalman to share some thought in this aspect.
Hello.
Yes,
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I have heard all the distinguished panelists who have shared their experience. First of all, I would like to share the World Indigenous Peoples Day with all of you, and it's a very happy and joyous occasion for the indigenous people of this region as well as the entire world. We have been celebrating right from even last night it began, and even till today, it will continue till midnight. We have so many webinar and others, and thanks to this, because without traveling, we are able to share with the rest of the world. I am very glad that these young people who have shared have really put me into a great thought, because they too understand about the indigenous people and where we stand today. My point here is, what is indigenous and why are indigenous people so important to the world? We are important because we can pilot the world. You talk it in terms of conservation, you talk it in terms of preservation, you term it in terms of anything. We hold the key. Countries, as we have seen, plan for 5 years, 10 years. But we indigenous people plan for generations. We have the land, we have the traditional knowledge, we have the culture, which is still intact, and we still follow that. Now today, the very theme, if one looks at why this theme has been evolved, one has to ponder, leaving no one behind, indigenous people and the call for a new social contract. The theme has been coined because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It has thrown or shown the growing inequalities between cultures, between people, between the nation states, And there is a need to rethink for a social contact. We are very important people. Our knowledge will take any country for years to come. The very sustainable developmental goal, the agenda which has been set for 2030, as Pankos and others also have put it, if indigenous people's contribution is not there, it will fail. 100% it will fail, because we know what is sustainable development. The cultivation that we cultivate, we don't do it for ourselves. We think of the bird, we think of the animals, we think about sustainability. And there is no greed. Look at the nation states today, where they have stood. They have robbed of all our resources, yet we have remained a silent spectator. Because there is access to justice, access to health services, and when these gross inequalities in the midst of poverty, when we point out, it tends to generate tension and conflicts. Rightly, I think it was Lina who has pointed out, saying that we are called anti-nationals. So this is something which people across the nation should think, because in this particular situation, the key component is that we must all progress together. We must all proceed together. Leaving somebody behind and somebody going ahead is not going to make the world a better world. So this is the reason why this theme has been kept. And I'm sure in trying to understand this, there is legacy starting from 1923, when Chief Orkeska wanted to make the league hear about the woes of the indigenous people, but it was denied. Thanks to Martin Obo, whose report has made tremendous impact. Finally, coming to the working group on the indigenous people, where I was involved very actively, and the coming of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. I know in the UN Forum how we had to engage with the nation states where they deny that there are indigenous people, yet they are attracted to our resources. So these are certain things which we need to ponder, because we don't survive for ourselves. We make others, people's survival ensured for the next generation to come. If forest is there, indigenous peoples are there. We are the keeper of the forest. It's like taking fish out of water. If you take me out of forest, the forest will get destroyed and will get destroyed. So we are intermingled with all this. So one has to understand, the society has to understand, the nation states have to understand, academia has to understand, activists have to understand that, look, leaving indigenous peoples aside, there cannot be a development and the nation cannot progress. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your very enlightening words, and we get new information and knowledge from you. Now, I would like to request Dr. Subal Maibong, the chairman of the YADEM, to share his observations and thought about this program, as well as on the topic we have discussed today. Dr. Maibong sir.
Maybe because our network is disconnected. We can move on to the next. Any other participant?
Any other participants have any specific questions? You can please. We can. I think we can take 2-3 questions.
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir? I am Janakarao, retired DFO from Andhra
Yes, yes. Yes, Dr. Rao.
I am very grateful to you, Dr. Jayant Kumar Sharma ji.
Yes.
After a long time, we were in a webinar, and it is a very good webinar organized. I should congratulate the organizers on this day. Today is a day for the indigenous people. Here in Andhra Pradesh, we are celebrating the International Tribal Day. And the department, there are some interventions regarding the development of indigenous people. Recently, AP State Biodiversity Board is
yes, please.
Floating a scheme that called we have to give each family nearly 50 to 60 plants, and it is called herbal home garden, and the plants are very common, and they are of age-old traditional species which were consumed by our forefathers, and now also we are going to eat daily. That is that green leaf and drumstick, papaya, etc., etc. And besides that, some species are annual and some species are biannual and some are perennial. And these are the schemes just from this year onwards. The AP State Biodiversity Board is going to have raise nurseries in AP State, and it is a very good intervention, what I felt. Thank you. And this type of intervention should come up in the entire India, and especially where the nutrition value is very less regarding the indigenous tribal groups. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sharma ji. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rao,
for giving me the
thank you, Rao, for sharing the Andhra Pradesh Forest Department initiatives in this line. Really, endemic species which are we look from the perspective of the cultural keystone species of the indigenous communities. These are the very important conservations and new propagations and maintaining the well stock of the populations in the indigenous communities habitat area is an important issues. Even what we talk about the indigenous medicinal practices, herbal medicinal practices, at the same time we have to look after the what is the natural stock of those medicinal plants, how we can develop the stock. Otherwise, if that natural population is declined, our cultural practices will also be declined. There is a very important interlinks between the ecological stocks and the cultural practices. From that perspective also, this is very important. I think this is very exciting, and today's discussion specifically highlighted some of the things. I just want to take opinion from all the panelists and the discussions. In moderation of the whole program, I realized that this kind of dialogue and interaction, experience sharing among the young scholars through their research work in a forum which is targeted for the indigenous community are the very important requirement of the time, at least in the context of Northeast. One. Second is more and more indigenous youth coming forward, taking up the issues of different aspects of the studies of indigenous knowledge system and indigenous communities of the Northeast is an important area, because there are lots of aspects which is not properly documented. There are lots of issues which is not properly highlighted. That is another area. Maybe if we continue this kind of discussions involving more and more young populations, it will create an environment and new sparks for the process. Maybe there is a need of not only a Dimasa Scholar League, that may be a Northeast Scholar League for the Northeast people of Northeast, particularly indigenous people of Northeast. Maybe we can think in a greater way together in that perspective. Third important area, what I feel, everybody realized that our younger generations are not properly oriented through education systems for the to understand what they have in their own systems, and where there is a need of revival of the concept of the heritage educations for all younger generation, and for the scholars from the primary, upper primary, secondary, higher secondary and higher education at all level. Maybe we have to create an alternative approach of heritage education. At the same time, we can go for advocacy and lobby to incorporate those things in the mainstream education process. Is another areas where there is a need of to work together. Third important things like 2030 target of SDG, there are lots of discussions going on. Maybe we can think in an alternative way to a voice of the indigenous communities from the Northeast, particularly what they think about their own perspectives about the SDG from their own point of view. Maybe it's a different document we can place through different forum as a part of the tools of advocacy and lobby, because every one of the discussions realize there is a need of alternative thought of development, including the indigenous people's own perceptions and desire, which is not reflected in the pre-designed developmental approach. I think these are the major learning from my perspective. If our panelists and discussions have their they agree on this point, or they want to put forward new points to it, which can be a takeaway from today's discussion for future initiatives. So I would like to request the panelists and discussions, if you want to put forward some alternative points which need to be takeaway for the future initiatives. When I would like to request Uttam Bathari to share something in this light.
Yeah, maybe that can come later. Let's wait for, if the panelists, like you said, if the panelists want to give some takeaways for the future course of action, let's hear them out first. Maybe just for like 1 minute or 2 minutes like that. So I request the panelists to come up.
Sir?
Yes, Monson?
Yes, yeah. So, to me personally, what I believe is that it's true, as Sir Sarma have said, that the alternative approach is very much important. So, which is why even in my presentation also I have mentioned about the ethno development. So, ethno development, it is an alternative approach that it should be adopted, or it should come in a form of development policies that would really after knowing or after identifying the specific needs of the indigenous communities, rather than just implementing any kind of development policies that carries Eurocentrism or from the Western perspectives. So at the end, I did not mention more that any of this kind of approach, the alternative, it has to be a actor-oriented approach. So which is a participatory approach, which I think. So because as the scholars they would say, I could not recall the name. He would say it's a I could not recall the name. He said it's like a that it's like a putting a tumor in on the like in the rural or in indigenous communities as in a form of development policies, which results only the destruction of their culture and their identity. So yeah, on this take, I would, I take, this ethno development as an alternative approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monson. We will note down your advice and inputs. Lina, do you have any suggestion?
Sorry. Okay, so actually I was thinking that on the similar lines when we talk about when we are talking especially about the question of development, where does it come from, what kind of discourses are we using, the term precisely how it is used, and how the question of governmentality, everything comes in together. And also I just wanted to mention also Thomas Melson's presentation about the traditional knowledge systems that we have also has to gain a scientificity. We cannot just implement. So there is a process in which we integrate these processes, and this integration can only happen when there is a recognition that alternative systems need to be well studied, and then aligned with the scientific discourses, for a perhaps for a better understanding. And also how government policies cannot come only from because the stakeholders who is representing within that committee, and how many people who are actually in the ground should be equally represented. And when you are taking account of the ground realities, maybe for compensation or maybe even for land acquisition, these are one of the things. And another thing that I would consistently say is the sensitivity. The larger question that we try to address through education is the sensitivity and acknowledgement of especially nowadays we talk about anti-reservation policies and all. Is people already connotes equality and equity in the same terms. When we don't have the same kind of resources, we cannot expect to compete on that same level. So this is also a question of how do we give more opportunities for learning, and also provide an equity for learning. And also in a way, if you have that learning, then you can also have that socio-economic equity that we actually want to address in our country. So this is where our policy lapses are, some of the things. I mean, there are a lot more, but I would just point out these few things are perhaps something that I feel is deeply related. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina. Whether Sarlok is here? Sarlok, do you have any suggestion?
Yes, sir. So yes, I agree with both Lina, both the panelists. Yes, that indeed. Yeah, and on the same line, just as Monson has said, leave no one behind. In this particular scores. So yes, not only leave we should not leave anyone behind, but along with that we should incorporate all the traditional technological knowledge also, which I couldn't mention earlier about the indigenous communities. Yes, all those has to be taken into consideration about the scientific aspects of of an indigenous communities. Yes, there are lots of scientific aspects which has to be studied further and carried forward, which can be incorporated for the fulfilling the sustainable development goals, as well as the address the climate overall scenario of the climate politics. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Taron, you were here? Pankaj Taron?
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Do you have any specific suggestion in this regard?
Yeah, I totally agree what you have suggested that we should come together. We should at least once in a month or that we should come and discuss all the issues, especially relating to indigenous peoples. And yes, I totally agree with Thomas and Lina. They have put in their thoughts, which is really relevant, and we should actually include all the actors who are in the ground, and at the same time there should be socio economic equity amongst all the people. Then only we will be able to move forward. So this I totally agree. And why not, as per your suggestion, why only Dimasa? Let's expand it. But they should all expanding the platform. So yes, this is what I want to say, Dr. Sama. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I would like to request Bathari to share his viewpoints.
Thank you, Jayantada and everyone present here. Is it only my opinion, or is it the vote of thanks? Because as part of the program, I also need to propose a vote of thanks. In any case, like so many things have been said today. I would like to bring out only 3 points out here, because we have had very long session today. One is something that is called leaving no one behind. To me, it seems like what is happening around the world. It's not like to say today no one leaving behind is not very appropriate, because I feel those who think that they left us behind, they should come back to where we were or where we are, because that's the only way we can resolve this climate crisis. Otherwise, as I started the discussion today about the report of IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, talking about today that nothing is going to reverse. The thing is, it has been caused so far. So it's the focus, the dialogue, what you say, the catchword should not be leaving one behind. Catchword should be that we are all going back to where they were, like we are, like where indigenous people are. Because they have always been living in nature, nurturing it at the same time. Like my brother Sukandu said, that we never cultivate for ourselves. We think about everyone, we cultivate for everyone. So this is what I think we should take it home today. This is our takeaway home today. We are not left behind. We are where we are supposed to be. Let the world return and come back to where we are. Okay. Number 2, other than indigenous people, the word indigenous, the word that has been used mostly was a development. And I, being the one of the organizer or one of the member of the organizing group, that is YADEM, Youth Association for Development and Empowerment, I need to clear the name that my organization bears as a managing trustee. In our organization, when we talk about development, we do not talk about development the way the larger capitalist political economy talks about. For instance, we do not want big hoteliers coming into Diffu. We want every citizen of Diffu to have a spare room, and to promote the concept of homestay, so that everyone is benefited from the new social linkages or economic linkages. So that's how we believe in, and that's what we think about development in our organization. And thirdly, what I see, what I feel from the presentations made today and otherwise also, we need to put a serious thought into the process of knowledge transmission. Because when we talk about knowledge, the knowledge cannot sustain by itself unless it is transmitted to the younger generation. And given the advent of the modern education system, where our children goes every day and learn different, different things or different, or I would rather say alien to us, to learn that the modern scientific tradition, everything, whatever you call it, they learn there. And in the process, there is a disjuncture that Jayantada was talking about at the beginning. There is a disjuncture in the traditional knowledge, any formal school or formal syllabus as such. What we do is we learn, our learning process is apprenticeship process. You go to the Zoom, you look at the communities farming, your elders farming, you pick up the trick from them. That's how we learn. But when a child goes to the school, modern school, does not go to the Zoom, there comes this juncture. So what I think is that we seriously need to think about creating an alternative mode of transmission of this traditional knowledge. Otherwise, very soon it's going to be just something that is documented or remains archived, like one of our panelists talked about. Mere documentation is not sufficient. So it will only remain documented, but it will never see actually being played out in the field, like our discussion said about the actors, real actors. So I think we seriously need to think about the process of transmission of traditional knowledge. That's all. These are the things, these two things. One is what we are not left behind. Those who think that they left us behind, they must come back where we are, where we stand today. Number one. Number two, we of the alternative system of transmission of traditional knowledge. These, I think, must have takeaways for today. And with this, if Jayantada permits, I would also propose a vote of thank. Jayantada, ঠিক আছে? Jayantada? All right. Maybe he, Jayantada, are you there?
4 points. I just.
Okay. Okay. Carry on.
Yes. Yes. Are you listening me?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
We have to understand the collectivisms, mutualism, minimalism, and adaptation to nature. These are the key philosophy. Basically, indigenous people always establish and show us. There should be a new approach to understand that from the indigenous community. For that purpose, we have to make strategies. At plus, before vote of thanks, I would like to request YADEM and Dimasa Scholars League to continue this effort for the dialogue. And I'm always available, whatever the help and whatever the support requests, I'm available for this kind of causes, and hope the whoever participate in this forum, this discussion, they will keep touch with the YADEM and Dr. Bathari and other officials of YADEM and Dimasa Scholars League, so that we can continue this approach in future. Thank you.
Yeah, Shivraj, I can see Shivraj raising hand. Come on. Shivraj, you want to say something?
Oh, hello. This is Shivraj from Dimasa Scholars League. I could not attend the first parts of the discussion, but later on I have heard all the eminent, like you all are our teachers only. So like Sarma sir had also said, and Uttamda, you all will be there to guide us, I'm sure. And yeah, this knowledge transfer will happen, and I'm sure the new generation will take the discussions forward. And like as a part of Dimasa Scholars League. Yeah, it's just the name, and since some of our scholars have come together and formed it, or else we also discuss a lot of contemporary issues. We have a YouTube channel where we have like shared all those, so you can also visit those things. So thank you so much all. It was a pleasure to listen to you, different perspective. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Sivraj, and thank you, Jayanpada. I think, yeah, with the help and encouragement of everyone, maybe we can take this forward, and we must take this forward, not for ourselves again, even for those who think that they left us behind. We must take this forward, and I won't take much time. I will not take individual names. I thank everyone who has been part of this exercise today here, the panelists and all the participants. Thank you so much again, and we hope that we will see very soon again. We'll meet very soon again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you everyone for your active participation. Hope we can again able to meet and continue these discussions.
I hope so.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.